Since the inception of Call of Duty Zombies, there have been a plethora of perks introduced into the mode, some being amazing, and some being not so good. And because of this, we've seen various changes throughout their history, whether being a point change, an ability change, or simply being left out and replaced with something better. So in today's video, I'm going to run through the origins of each perk, alongside their last ever appearance, the price you have to pay for them, and a quantity of maps you can find them in. And just so you guys know, I will not be doing any of the non-Treyarch games. I will be going through World at War, Black Ops 1, 2, 3, 4, Cold War, and Modern Warfare 3. Anything outside of those will not be counted. Now that we got out of the way, let's carry on. So let's go back to where it all started, Verrucht. With the introduction of Verrucht, we also received our very first ever look at our to-be beloved perk system, where we were introduced to 4 new perks, and the first one of today's video, which is Juggernog. Everybody knows what Juggernog does. Juggernog is vital to every player's run, no matter the map, increasing the player's health, allowing for more damage to be taken from zombies. What more could be said? And you can tell the importance of this perk, because this was first introduced at the very beginning in World at War of Verrucht, and it was still to be seen to this day in Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt, costing 2,500 points and on a total of 28 maps throughout the Zombies series. Next up, we have none other than Quick Revive. Now this once again was introduced all the way back in World at War on Verrucht, being a vital perk throughout Zombies history, giving you the ability to revive yourself if downed whilst in solo, whilst also providing you the ability to revive your teammates faster whilst playing in co-op. Now there have been a few changes to Quick Revive over the years, but this is the main feature that Quick Revive has had for the majority of it. Last being seen in Operation Deadbolt, and for the majority of maps costing only 500 points, unless you're in World at War where it originally cost 1,500 points. Quick Revive also takes the top spot for the number of maps that it can be found in, with a grand total of 34 maps where you can purchase Quick Revive. Easy to say, it's a favourite. Moving on from this, we have none other than Speed Cola. Speed Cola, as the name suggests, giving you the ability to reload at a faster rate than normal, being crucial especially in those high rounds, or if you're running something like an LMG, which can be a ball ache to reload if you're just using it by itself. I don't advise it. But yet again, this is another perk that can be found all the way from its origins in World at War Verrucht all the way up until the current Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt Zombies, costing the player a mere 3,000 points and on a total of 27 maps. Next up on the list, we have somewhat of a controversial perk within Zombies history, and this is none other than Double Tap 1.0. This perk originally provided the player with the ability to increase their fire rate by 33%. Now this was seen by many as a downgrade, if anything, as it meant that players used up ammo at a faster rate. Due to this, you can only actually get Double Tap 1.0 from its origin in World at War Verrucht up until Moon in Black Ops 1, costing 2,000 points and only seen across 8 maps in total. Now these were all the perks that were introduced during the World at War Zombies timeline. Next we move up until Black Ops 1, and the first one that we got introduced to in Black Ops 1 was none other than PhD Flopper. Introduced in Ascension, PhD Flopper gave the player the ability to avoid self-inflicted damage, which was a massive benefit to everybody, with the likes of the ray gun now being a lot more effective, not having to worry about being hit by the blast. Alongside this, players could also dive to prone from height, which would normally hurt the player, but instead created an explosion field around the player, damaging zombies. And whilst very popular and can be seen up until all the way through to Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt for 2,000 points, there are only a total of 6 maps in which you can find this perk. Pretty crazy if you ask me. Next up, and also introduced on Ascension, was none other than Stamina Up. This perk giving the player the ability to sprint for twice the amount of time, whilst also giving the player a 7% speed increase. Such a popular perk, in fact, that it made it all the way through once again to Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt, costing only 2,000 points, this time being seen in a grand total of 27 maps. Next up on the list is one that sways opinion depending on a few factors, but this one is none other than Deadshot Daiquiri. First introduced in Black Ops 1 Call of the Dead, Deadshot Daiquiri had a few features to it. These being that the weapon spread was reduced by 35% when aiming, alongside also removing the weapon sway while aiming down sights. On top of this, it actually moves the aim assist lock on from the torso to the head when shooting zombies, unless you're on PC, then you get nothing. And whilst this does sway opinion, this perk can still be seen all the way through to Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt, costing only 1,500 points, and can be seen on a grand total of 16 maps. Not bad for a perk that a lot of people don't actually enjoy that much. And finally, for our last Black Ops 1 perk introduction is none other than Mule Kick. Now, first introduced on Moon, Mule Kick provided the player with the ability to carry a third weapon, with one major downfall: the fact that if you got downed, you lost that third weapon forever. Now, this was changed in Cold War. If you upgraded it enough, you could get that weapon back when repurchasing Mule Kick, but for the majority of other maps, that's just not a thing. Now, this perk was last seen in Cold War on the map Forsaken and costs the player 4,000 points, the joint most expensive perk if you don't take into consideration Cold War price variances, which we're not, being in a grand total of 24 maps overall. We now move on to Black Ops 2, and in transit we were introduced to the brand new and improved Double Tap 2.0. After hearing feedback from players, the developers decided to make a change, with Double Tap 2.0 changing it up a bit and instead giving it the ability to shoot 2 bullets at once, basically increasing damage. This was a very popular move, and although it was such a popular move and players were overall happy with the adjustment of the perk, it can only actually be seen up until Black Ops 3 in Revelations, costing a total of 2,000 points once again, and only ever seen in 6 maps, meaning that Double Tap 2.0, whilst better, was actually in 2 maps fewer than Double Tap 1.0. I don't know what happened there. Another new perk introduction on Black Ops 2 for transit was none other than Tombstone Soda. Now, with Tombstone Soda, the player had the ability to down themselves and drop a tombstone where their body would lay. On completion of a round, the player could get back to that exact same spot and pick up everything that they originally had without the Tombstone perk. Now, this is a bit of a problem originally, considering you had to be in a co-op game and could not actually get the perk whilst playing in solo. And whilst there were a few changes, Tombstone Soda has only ever been found in 8 maps in total across its lifespan from transit all the way up until Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt. Costing 2,000 points didn't make it any more popular. Next up is the introduction of Who's Who. First ever seen on Die Rise, and purchasing this perk gave players the ability, when downed, to spawn in a clone of themselves. The downfall being that they spawned in with none of the stuff they had. This meant that the player had the ability to go back and either revive their original player or carry on as the clone throughout the game. This perk did not see the day of light. With very limited popularity, this perk only ever saw one map, the map it was introduced on. Therefore, after the release of Die Rise, it was never seen again. And even though it cost 2,000 points, the devs decided it was not worth putting back into another map. Now, unlike Who's Who, the next perk introduced on Mob of the Dead was none other than Electric Cherry, which had a lot more popularity than its predecessor. This perk allowed the player the ability to spawn in a shockwave around the player when reloading, stunning all zombies in the vicinity. This could be a lifesaver at times, and a very popular perk indeed. Costing only 2,000 points, this perk can be seen all the way up until Black Ops 3 Revelations, but is only in a grand total of 6 maps over its lifespan. Maybe one day we'll get it back. Speaking of fan favourites, another very good perk introduced in Black Ops 2 was Vulture Aid Elixir. This perk was introduced back in Buried and allowed the player the opportunity to shoot zombies with the possibility of gaining ammo from their corpses. Alongside this, also highlighting areas of interest for the player around the map, such as perk locations, wall weapons, and the pack punch machine. A popular perk, yet it never made it past its original map, being last seen on Buried for a total of 3,000 points, only ever being on the one map. Concluding on Black Ops 2, we now move on to Black Ops 3, where we only actually ever saw one perk introduction throughout its lifespan, somehow. But boy oh boy was it a good one. We got introduced to none other than Widow's Wine. Widow's Wine was first introduced on Shadows of Evil, the starting map of Black Ops 3. This perk could almost be seen to some as a second jug, where the player's grenades were swapped out for sticky Widow's Wine grenades, which also worked as a shield of sorts, where if the zombies got close enough to hit you, an explosion would occur, freezing the zombies in their current stance, giving you an opportunity to get away. And whilst this is a very popular perk within the zombies community, the last time we saw it was back in Black Ops 3 Revelations. Being the joint most expensive perk with Mule Kick for 4,000 points, you can only sadly get Widow's Wine in a grand total of 5 maps. Moving on from Black Ops 3, very quickly, we move on to Black Ops 4, where we were introduced to a variety of brand new perks. Not necessarily for the better, but that's a whole different story. The first one we saw though was none other than Time Slip. Time Slip, which was introduced to us on Voyage of Despair, provided the ability to cycle through the mystery box at greatly increased rates, basically meaning that we could get a weapon from the box a bit quicker. Nothing special, and as we'll see with a lot of these perks from Black Ops 4, it only made it for a grand total of 8 maps, all being Black Ops 4 maps, with this perk last being seen on Tag the Totem for 1,500 points. Next up, we have one of the only anomalies to what I just said, which is the Death Perception perk. This perk, first seen in Voyage of Despair, can be seen all the way up until Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt, costing the players a mere 2,000 points. It provided a similar effect to Vulture's Aid in Buried, in the sense that it gave the player the ability to see things through walls, but this time in the sense of zombies included. This perk can be seen in a grand total of 15 maps across the series. Our next perk of Black Ops 4 is Ethereal Razor. First seen on Voyage of Despair, this perk provided the ability to make offhand melee swipes affect multiple enemies in an arc, also providing lunge bonus damage, whilst restoring a small amount of health at times. This perk was last seen once again in Tag the Totem for 4,000 points and only lasted 8 maps. The next perk that we are introduced to is Electric Burst, an upgrade as sorts to Electric Cherry. This time, whilst creating shockwaves around enemy zombies, it also creates stronger shockwaves depending on the amount of ammo you have left in your clip, meaning that if you reload at the end of your clip, you are creating a stronger shockwave than you would if you reloaded after one bullet. This perk still didn't make it past Black Ops 4, only lasting until Tag the Totem, costing the player a grand total of 3,000 points and can be seen across 8 maps. The next Black Ops 4 perk is one I actually don't mind too much, which is saying something, but we have none other than Dying Wish. First introduced again in Voyage of Despair, Dying Wish prevents the player from falling into Last Stand. Instead, the player enters Berserk mode, where the screen turns red and prevents the player from receiving all damage for 9 seconds. The only downfall being that after this mode has ended, the player will be left with 1 health, meaning that you do need to get out of any sticky situation you were in quickly. Although sadly, this perk was once again hit with the Black Ops 4 curse and never seen after Tag the Totem, costing a grand total of 4,000 points and only lasting 8 maps. Next on the list is Stone Cold Stronghold. Again introduced in Voyage of Despair, this perk gave the ability for players to create a circle on the ground. When stood stationary in this circle, the player would receive a damage boost against enemies and slowly gain armor over time. The downfall being that you had to be standing still, which wasn't one of my preferred things to do in zombies if I'm honest. But this perk could be used all the way up until Black Ops 4 Tag the Totem for 2,500 points and only seen across 8 maps, like the majority of these Black Ops 4 perks. Now we're introduced to another perk from Black Ops 4 Voyage of Despair, which in my opinion isn't all that too great, but everyone has their opinions. This is none other than Victorious Tortoise. When using this perk, the player can pull out their shield, blocking damage from all directions. And when the player's shield is destroyed, the perk will cause the shield to send out a defensive explosion. Whilst this could be seen as pretty useful, you do have to have your shield out, which, if I'm honest, I don't do that often. So to me, it's not that important. This perk can last be seen in, you guessed it, Tagda and Toten for a grand total of 2,500 points, only lasting 8 maps. Our next perk is a perk upgrade of sorts, which is Deadshot Dealer. This perk, originally from Voyage of Despair, when purchased allows for you to automatically aim at the enemy's head while snapping in and out of sights, whilst also reducing the hipfire spread of a weapon while firing from the hip. It's a perk that can be used, I guess, to some benefit, but personally not one of my favourites. Last being seen again in Tagda and Toten, only costing 2,000 points though, and can be seen across a total of 8 maps. Another Black Ops 4 perk seen from Voyage of Despair till Tagda and Toten is Bandolier Bandit, a perk that personally I would not tend to use, but when used provides the player with an increased ammo stock for all their weapons, which you can see as useful. But would I pick it as a perk slot over others? No. This perk can be seen over 8 maps in total in its lifespan and costs the player a total of 3,000 points. Unlike the perk we just mentioned, this one I much prefer. Another Black Ops 4 perk introduced in Voyage of Despair, of course, is Winter's Wail. With this perk, the player can generate a frost explosion that freezes or slows enemies within the proximity of their explosion when damaged by an enemy's melee attack, just like Widow's Wine. This perk, to me, a lot more useful, only costs a grand total of 4,000 points. I know, on the steep side, but sadly it's only seen across 8 maps, falling back into the classic pattern of lasting until Tagda and Toten. Our next perk in line is a bit more of a popular one over the series, and actually breaks the Black Ops 4 curse. This is none other than PhD Slider. Introduced in Voyage, this perk can actually be seen all the way up and through to Cold War Forsaken, similar to PhD Flopper, but this time round, instead of diving, the player can create a slide, damaging zombies while sliding through them. It's a pretty cool effect if you ask me. The only downside being that it does cost a grand total of 4,000 points, but was obviously popular because it did get seen across a grand total of 14 maps, almost doubling what the majority of the Black Ops 4 perks lifespan was. Next up on the list, we have Zombshell. First seen in Voyage of Despair, Zombshell allows the players to have a chance to create a small contamination field when killing normal zombies. This field comes in the form of a small electric orb, which will last for between 5 to 10 seconds, which when a zombie comes into contact with the field, they will be slowed down, and any damage they receive will be increased. This perk can be seen up until Tagda and Toten, costs the player a grand total of 4,000 points, and can only be seen across 8 maps. Next up, we have none other than Blood Wolf Bite. When this perk is bought by the player, and the player manages to inflict a decent amount of damage within a small amount of time, a friendly wolf named Luna will spawn in, helping the player to defeat zombies. So you know, if you like having a good doggo friend in the battlefield with you, this is the perk for you. Although obviously not too popular because it did not make it past Tagda and Toten, but can be purchased for 3,000 points, lasting a total of 8 maps. On to our next perk of Black Ops 4, which to me is just not worth our time, but we have Blaze Phase. First seen in Voyage, Blaze Phase provides the ability to send a player straight through a horde of zombies at extreme speeds, knocking them all out the way. Sounds good, right? Well, you do have to stand still and crouch for a significant amount of time for it to charge up before you do this, so not so great. Hence why this perk once again only made it up until Tagda and Toten. Costing 2,000 points was not enough, as it could only be seen through 8 maps. We've made it, ladies and gentlemen. We've made it to the last perk of Black Ops 4. Boy, did they want to change the game up in Black Ops 4. But our last one is none other than Secret Source. First introduced in Voyage of Despair, and you know it, all the way to Tagda and Toten in a grand total of 8 maps. Secret Source provided the player with the ability to receive a random perk that's not been assigned to any other slot. Yeah, that's what it does. This perk does only cost 1,500 points, so it's basically a Wonder Fizz. And surprise, surprise, as we end off Black Ops 4, this can only be seen across 8 maps. And we have made it to our last ever perk introduced in Call of Duty Zombies. This perk is none other than Elemental Pot, first introduced for the very first time in Cold War Die Machine. a pretty new perk. Although has been previously seen in Call of Duties like Black Ops 3 with the double pack punch, this perk provides a random base ammo mod effect when shooting your weapon. And this perk can be seen all the way up until current zombies Modern Warfare 3 Operation Deadbolt, costing between 2,500 to 7,000 points. Now this perk can only be seen across 7 maps, but you have to take into consideration that this perk is brand spanking new basically. So with that said, it's doing pretty well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the origins of every single perk within Call of Duty. My question is, what do you think the next perk that we will receive will be in the franchise? What do you think it will do? But that is all for today. I hope you have enjoyed the video. If you have, it would be greatly appreciated if you could leave a like and subscribe for more. But on that note, I hope you have enjoyed the video, and I shall see you all in the next one.